Hey guys, I thought about adding this to the Charmed Revisited video, but that video kind of focused more on adding / building on old theories I'd already presented, and this one is kind of a different theory altogether, so I thought it deserved its own video. So, in the 10 more things that didn't make sense about Charmed video, I think that's the one. I can't be sure. I've done so many Charmed videos at this point, I'm kind of getting lost about which one's which, but yeah, I'm fairly certain it was that one where I talked about how it never really made sense to me that the Warren cousins in the 20s in the episode Pardon My Past had the powers of ice and fire, considering they are members of the Warren line, a line well known for having 3 distinct powers. The power to freeze time, power to move things with your mind, and the power to see the future. Ice and fire never really fit in there anywhere, and it was never seen before in their line or after, so it just seemed like an anomaly, if you will. But not too long ago, I got a comment letting me know that there's actually a theory out there that the Warren line, aka the Charmed line, is actually descended from the evil Enchantress we met in the season 4 episode A Night to Remember, and I was just immediately like, oh my god, where do I find this theory? And they pointed me in the right direction, so of course I immediately looked it up because I was like, wouldn't that be crazy if after all this time it was established that, those ice and fire powers actually did come from somewhere. And I found the posts, and while the posts do lay out the basic theory, they don't really go too much into detail, so I thought that's what we could do today. Just take a magnifying glass and deep dive on into this theory, because honestly, the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. So, before we get into the actual theory, let's take a look at the episode this theory is based off of. The season 4 episode, A Night to Remember, in which we learned about an evil witch that lived in the 12th century who cast a spell to appropriate a prince's love for another onto herself and plotted to create an evil heir with him to ensure that the kingdom would be ruled by dark magic forevermore. Basic evil master plan sort of stuff. And so it's immediately apparent to the audience that this must be Paige's past life because she looks exactly like her, so we know why Paige seems to remember the fairy tale so well. She says it's something she invented.
Okay, I know it sounds stupid, but when I was little, I invented this horrible little fairy tale, and it just always seemed really real.
But it's really a memory from her past life. And while she remembers the fairy tale so vividly, she can't quite remember the spell that the evil Enchantress cast to ensnare the prince. So, on a whim, she checks the Charmed One's Book of Shadows, and lo and behold, wouldn't you know, the spell is in there. So before Piper and Phoebe can stop her, she reads the spell in its entirety, which causes the prince to be pulled from the medieval world before he and the evil Enchantress can make a baby, and into the modern day world where he immediately recognizes Paige as the evil Enchantress, who is royally pissed that the prince was taken and decides to follow him through time. Now, before I go any further, I would just like to say that I feel like this episode confirms the speculation I made in the first 10 things that didn't make sense in Charmed video that I did. I think it was that video. I explained that in the Pardon My Past episode, Leo claims that Phoebe only recognized the cousins in the 20s as her sisters because she recognized their souls rather than them actually resembling one another.
Wait, so you saw us in our past lives? I mean, did we look the same?
Yeah, you did, actually. Kinda.
Well, they probably look the same to you because your soul recognized their souls. I mean, we all tend to travel in the same circle of family, friends, even enemies throughout our various lives. And that's why our souls kind of recognize each other.
But in this episode, it is clearly intended that Paige and the evil Enchantress are identical and don't simply share a soul, and that's why everyone recognizes them. The prince automatically recognized her as the Enchantress, Paige's boss thought the Enchantress was Paige, and the sisters immediately recognized her when she came through the portal. Heck, Paige even recognizes herself! Definitely more than just, oh, my soul recognizes yours territory. And they even reference Pardon My Past in this episode.
I mean, my past life came back to bite me on the butt. Why can't Paige's?
So yeah, I feel like this episode definitely confirms that there's at least some truth to what I was saying in that video, and that the sisters share much more with their past lives than just a soul. But I digress. So anyway, the Enchantress comes looking for the prince and uses her powers to take him back to their time, prompting the sisters to follow her back into the medieval world, and Paige and Leo follow to stop her once again, and this time for good. They bind her powers so the evil Enchantress is left alive but powerless. Now, on to the theory. So, the evil Enchantress's Book of Shadows entry says that she is a witch who came to the craft late, but learned to use it quickly. She was gifted with the power to conjure the elements, and was also skilled at creating potent potions to achieve her goals. Say that 5 times fast. Potent potions, potent. Nope, not happening. Anyway, so defiant, clever, and independent, she was by far the most powerful witch of the 12th century. So, in the episode, even before the sisters actually meet the evil Enchantress and see that she looks just like Paige, Phoebe has already begun to suspect that the evil Enchantress might have been Paige's past life due to the prince automatically glomming onto her and the similarities between Paige and the Enchantress.
Defiant, clever, and independent. That kind of describes Paige, don't you think? A powerful witch who came to the craft late, but learned to use it quickly. I'm telling you, this is Paige.
What are you getting at?
Well, don't you think it's a huge coincidence that Paige's fairy tale just happens to be in the Book of Shadows, and that this prince just happens to show up in the 21st century, head over heels in love with her? What if it's a memory? Paige's memory from a past life.
And this is obviously confirmed once they actually meet the Enchantress, so from the show we know for certain that the evil Enchantress is a past life of Paige's. But that doesn't necessarily make them related, but here's why I think they might be. First, did anyone notice how Phoebe worried that vanquishing the evil Enchantress might affect Paige?
So if we vanquish past Paige, don't we risk vanquishing our Paige too?
Possibly.
It's like, makes you wonder what caused her to think that. I mean, the only reason P. Russell's death affected Phoebe in the present day is because the cousins cast a spell to make that happen.
I can't have you guys join forces, not in this life, not in any life. God forgive us. Evil witch in my sight, vanquish thyself, vanquish thy might, in this and every future life.
So there's really no reason that vanquishing Paige's past life should have affected her soul's evolution or ability to pass on. Unless maybe something in Phoebe's intuition / premonition abilities sensed that if they killed the evil Enchantress before she was able to have a child and pass on her line, it could somehow affect the charm line and maybe even stop it from existing.
If she conceives his heir, dark magic will rule his kingdom forever. History will be rewritten. Your future
We'll be screwed, the world will plunge into darkness, yada, yada, yada.
I'm telling you, it's the sort of thing that the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. And also another big reason I think that this theory makes a lot of sense is the elemental magic. So in this video, as I described a little bit earlier, I talked about how little sense it made that Prue and Phoebe's past lives, P. Bowen and P. Russell, had the elemental powers of ice and fire when they were all Warren witches, which is a line very well known for having 3 very specific powers. The power to freeze time, the power to move things with your mind, and the power to see into the future. And every other Warren we've seen shared the same gifts. Brianna had telekinesis and used it to separate Gabriel from his sword. Grams also shared the power of telekinesis, and their mother Patty had the power to freeze time. So it made no sense that in part in my past, the 3 cousins, also of the Warren line, had only one of those powers. P. Baxter had the power to freeze time.
I like having that power.
Grams. What's the matter?
He's fighting through my freezes. He's adjusting or something.
Hurry, freeze him.
But P. Russell and P. Bowen had the powers of fire and ice respectively, and it made no sense whatsoever because that's not a Warren power at all, and it was never explained why or where it came from. Which leads us to the evil Enchantress, who had elemental powers. And while I still think that what Leo said in Part of My Past about Phoebe only recognizing the cousins by their souls is a bit ridiculous, I do think he was probably right about how the same souls tend to travel in the same circles, which means that Paige's soul would have always been connected to her sisters even long before they were born, and probably all the way back to at least medieval times, so it's pretty much a guarantee that she would have already been in their orbit, so to speak. But here's what really makes me think that the Warrens might actually be descendants of the evil Enchantress. So that entry about the evil Enchantress in the Book of Shadows, it really makes you wonder who wrote it and why. Even if we assume the earliest known witch in the Warren line, Melinda Warren, had written the entry, it makes no sense for her to have done that. I mean, how would she have even known the story, let alone the spell? Paige was the only one who knew, and that was literally only because she'd written it in a former life. There is no logical reason whatsoever that I can think of that Melinda Warren, a witch born in the 17th century, should know or care about a random witch that had lived 5 centuries before she was even born, who had had her powers bound and was no longer a threat, and was probably long dead by that point anyway. Unless that witch was actually her ancestor, and the reason Melinda knew the story was because it had been passed on generation to generation throughout the ages, and Melinda decided to add the family story to the Book of Shadows when she started writing it.
Book of Shadows. Oh my, it's gotten so thick.
It wasn't always?
No, but obviously each generation of Warren witches has added to it over the years and has made it so. Have you added anything?
I really think it's a pretty solid theory, and honestly, it would also kind of help explain another question I always had, and that was how Melinda, a witch, was born from a line of mortals. It never made sense to me how all her powers seemed to come out of nowhere. But if Melinda was a descendant of the evil Enchantress, a powerful witch who had had her powers bound by the most powerful witches to have ever existed, it would explain a lot about her lineage. The charmed magic could have been so powerful that it bound the Enchantress's magic for centuries, so that the latent magic was passed down from mother to daughter along with her story until it finally reawakened in Melinda. But even then, the elemental magic remained dormant until accessed by none other than the cousins, which is honestly just another reason to give us a prequel, to explain how they and they alone were able to tap into the elemental magic in their family. And finally, one last thing that I noticed that seemed like a rather minor detail, but I think is very suggestive, is listen to the pitch of the evil Enchantress's voice.
That's why I plan on following his footsteps and bringing him back. After I destroyed the good magic that intervened, of course. What name did you call me?
Throughout the entire episode, she speaks in this very deep voice, but the moment her powers are bound, her voice immediately starts to change pitch, and she suddenly sounds a lot more like Paige.
What have you done to me?
We've bound your powers, Enchantress.
No more kingdom come for you.
Not for you. How could you do this to me? To us? I didn't do it. We did it.
Don't tell me I become good in the future.
Damn good.
I feel like that could be a very subtle indicator on the show's part that by binding the Enchantress's powers, they may have also bound the evil within her, especially since her sinister demeanor seems to evaporate on the spot to be replaced by what I can only describe as a pout. You know, definitely doesn't strike me as a type who's gonna go out and try and cause more trouble, and in fact, might just be the beginning to a very familiar story. And also, just a little fun fact to throw in here, did you know that the name Halliwell is apparently derived from the words Hallig and well, which can at least be traced back to the year 1200? Right around the evil Enchantress's time? I wonder if it's just a coincidence that they chose that time frame for this episode, or if it's something more. But yeah, that was my little deep dive into this theory. What did you think? Is there anything you noticed in the show that might add to the theory, or anything that might negate it? I tried my best to include all relevant information, but it's always possible that I miss something. Though it should probably be noted that I always base my videos on information that was established in the show and not the comics. I'm not a huge fan of continuations to begin with, but I especially hate retcons. I mean, heck, when I was looking at Melinda's page while researching this video, I saw that the comics apparently claim that a woman named Nina/Isabel was the original witch, although she lived during Melinda Warren's time. So this supposed original witch lived in the 17th century, even though the show established that witches existed long before that. So it's like, stuff like this is one of the many reasons I do not read the comics nor consider them canon, which, okay, I know the show was known for a retcon or two, but at least it was part of the show, you know? Anyway, not important. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you liked the video. I know it's a bit shorter, but I thought this theory deserved kind of its own standalone segment, you know? And, oh, I almost forgot to mention this. A few months ago, I had a request to do a bit of a deep dive into grams, and I don't know if the person who requested that video still watches my channel, but if you do, I just wanted to say, did you know that Graham's birthday is on June 23rd? Methinks you might want to check back around that time. Just saying, wink. Anyway, as always, I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. Bye, guys!